I want you to picture your typical workday. Most of us work indoors. Maybe you work in an office or at home. Even after your workday, you might spend even more time indoors, watching TV, having dinner, or answering emails. Most of us are indoors for several hours every day, and perhaps during that time indoors, your nose gets stuffy, or the air begins to feel a little stagnant or dry. And at that point, you might even say, I'm going to go outside for some fresh air. Let me ask you this. How often do you think about air? Specifically, the indoor air that we breathe every day for the majority of every day. Think about how many times you breathe every day, hour, and minute. It's important for every single one of us. But what happens when that air is bad? My name is Mickey Bolliard, and today I will be talking about indoor air pollution, the dangers it carries, and the things that you can do to fight it. There are many pollutants that can penetrate the air we breathe, including gaseous ones like carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, and ozone. But particulate matter like mold, smoke, and dust can especially be a problem. The World Health Organization says that particulate matter can travel deep into the lungs and cause damage to your tissues and cells. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency states that indoor air pollution can have immediate or delayed impacts on our health. Some of those immediate impacts could be physical irritation of the nose, eyes, and throat, headaches, dizziness, and fatigue, and symptoms of diseases like asthma can begin to appear or get worse if you've already experienced those. Some of the delayed effects can appear after long periods of exposure or years after the exposure, and those effects can be serious, including respiratory diseases, heart disease, strokes, and even cancer. So because adverse health effects are not always immediately noticeable, we really need to be sure that we are regularly keeping the air we breathe clean of pollutants. But where do those pollutants come from? So some sources of that pollution can include fuel-burning stoves, tobacco products, bad or old insulation, cleaning or personal care products, paint fumes, some wood and furniture, and even your heating and AC system. And that's just the limited list. And also keep in mind that air pollution is absolutely biased. It's important that we use an equity lens when we talk about air pollution. And what do I mean by that? When I say equity lens, I mean the mindset that different populations experience different health risks and effects. So according to the World Health Organization, those who are more at risk for these pollution-related health risks include people with occupations that are often exposed to pollutants, like housekeepers, welders, and construction workers, people living near busy roads, people in low and middle income areas, and within low income households, women and children face the most health impacts because they tend to be the ones performing domestic tasks and they experience a greater exposure to stoves and open fires. So now that we've talked about the risks and dangers of air pollution and who is the most vulnerable, let's talk about what you can do to fight it. So I'm going to start at the community level and then work down to what you can do as an individual for yourself and your own health. So at the community level, you can advocate for your community and encourage policy change. So for example, in Birmingham, there's the Greater Birmingham Alliance to Stop Pollution, known as GASP. And GASP supports environmental justice in Birmingham by fighting for clean air access for all. This organization is a great example of lifting up communities that are on the forefront of the effects of pollution. So tying back to that equity lens that I mentioned earlier, remember that communities that have a lower average income also tend to be areas with the poorest air quality. So it's important to help all members of your community by ensuring access to clean air for everyone, especially those that are most at risk. Secondly, you can hold businesses accountable. It's probably no surprise that a lot of air pollution is generated by the emissions of certain companies. So think of it like this. Areas that are lower income are usually cheaper to build on, so companies will often build their factories and manufacturing plants in those areas, and they will often dispose of their waste in ways that can hurt the environment and the people living in that surrounding area. So that pollution could include air, but it could also include water and even noise. And because those buildings are in low-income areas, the people suffering are low-income populations. So you can connect with your local or community organizations and demand that those companies do better to manage their waste and also develop more sustainable practices. Overall, when it comes to community level action, always make sure that the organizations and movements that you're a part of are people-driven and use an equity lens. Now, at the individual level, you can aim for cleaner energy if you have the resources to do so. You can avoid appliances that use combustible fuel. You can also try to opt for walking, biking, or carpooling to limit your individual contributions to air pollution. Second, try to use air cleaners. So air cleaners can't remove gaseous pollutants, but they will be able to clean up the particulate matter such as mold, smoke, bacteria, mildew, and dust. So air cleaners can include air purifiers, which are machines that can range in price, size, and purpose. But air cleaners can also include houseplants. So the famous NASA Clean Air study found that about one houseplant for every 100 square feet can effectively remove particulate matter. That would be a lot of plants for your house, but plants come with other benefits, like reducing stress levels, increasing feelings of well-being, improving your mood, and even increasing your productivity. So if you think that you have a green thumb or could potentially have a green thumb, NASA recommends houseplants like the Areca palm, the snake plant, the spider plant, aloe vera, and my personal favorite, which is pictured here, the pothos plant. And that's just to name a few. So moving on to my last point, this is the most effective and potentially the easiest thing you can do to fight air pollution. Most home air systems do not bring in fresh air from the outside. They just cycle through the old air. So by opening windows and doors, you can allow outdoor air inside, especially when you're dealing with chemical fumes or anything that can create air pollutants like painting or cooking. This is the best way to remove all air toxins, including the gaseous ones. So by removing them from your indoor air circulation, you are helping yourself breathe better air. So if you're able, you can open your windows for 10 to 15 minutes every day. So, coming to a close, here are the 4 points that I want you to take home. First, air affects us. Air affects our bodies in many ways, and it could take years for you to notice the physical damage done by bad air. 2, remember that pollution is biased. It affects people disproportionately, zeroing in on low-income communities, women, and children the most. So keep that in mind when you advocate for change. And 3, advocate for change. Get to know the organizations in your community that fight against pollution through advocacy and policy level campaigns. And make sure that they have an equity lens. And 4, open a window. I challenge you to open your house to outside air for at least 10 minutes a day. Air purifiers and houseplants can only do so much, so if you are able, allow your house to breathe clean air too. I hope that the next time that you are indoors and the air gets a little stuffy, you will remember this talk, and maybe you will be able to breathe a little bit easier. Thank you.